When I first met Daniel, I didn't think twice about him. He was one of those people who seemed to naturally make everyone feel comfortable. He worked at the same office where I had just transferred, and from the very first day, he greeted me with an easy smile and a cup of coffee as though he had known me for years. I remember laughing awkwardly and saying, "You didn't have to do that," but he shrugged, replying, "Consider it a welcome gift." No strings attached. That phrase, "no strings attached," stuck with me. Because at the time, I really did think there were no strings. I was just trying to find my place in a new city, in a new job, and Daniel seemed like the kind of friendly coworker who wanted to help. He showed me the best coffee spots near the office, recommended a quiet park for weekend walks, even gave me shortcuts to avoid rush hour traffic. Nothing about it seemed unusual. He was just kind. Over time, I started looking forward to those small interactions. Whenever I walked into the break room and saw him there, I couldn't help but smile. He had a way of making ordinary conversations about weather, deadlines, or sports feel personal. It wasn't until much later that I realized the way he listened was different from most people. He wasn't just hearing words. He was paying attention, memorizing details. Like when I once mentioned my favorite childhood snack, and the very next week he brought a box of it, saying, "Found this at a store across town. Thought you'd like a little nostalgia." That's when things started to feel complicated. At first, I brushed it off. Friends do thoughtful things, right? But the more time we spent together, the more those thoughtful gestures began to blur into something deeper. If I was stressed, he noticed immediately and would find a way to distract me, like slipping funny doodles onto my desk during a meeting. If I was quiet, he wouldn't push me to talk, but he'd sit nearby until I did. And then there were the glances, the kind that lasted a little too long, the kind that made me feel like the air in the room had changed. One evening, after a late project kept us both at the office, we decided to grab dinner. It wasn't planned, it wasn't special, just burgers at a small diner down the street. But something shifted that night. We talked for hours, not about work or deadlines, but about our families, our childhood dreams, our fears. He told me about his father's illness, how he had grown up faster than most kids his age. I shared things I hadn't told anyone since moving to the city, like how I still carried guilt about leaving home, about the people I felt I'd abandoned. There was a moment right there in that dimly lit booth when the silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy, charged, and I realized this wasn't just friendliness anymore. This was something else entirely. The next day at work, I tried to act normal, professional, but the memory of the way his eyes softened when I laughed at one of his stories lingered. The truth was, I was drawn to him in a way I couldn't ignore. And yet, that's exactly what I tried to do. Because there was a catch. There was always a catch. Daniel had a girlfriend. She didn't work with us, but I'd seen her once when she came by to meet him for lunch. She was beautiful, confident, and clearly adored him. I told myself that was all I needed to know. Whatever feelings I was beginning to develop had to be shut down immediately. I even started avoiding him, taking my coffee breaks at odd hours, keeping conversations short, pretending to be too busy. But Daniel noticed. One afternoon, he cornered me in the hallway. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. His voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. I shook my head quickly. "Of course not. Why would you think that?" "Because you've been different," he said. "You don't laugh at my bad jokes anymore. You don't even look at me." I wanted to deny it, to pretend it was all in his head. But I couldn't. Instead, I whispered, "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I look at you too much." The silence that followed was unbearable. For a second, I thought he would step back, laugh it off, and restore the easy friendship we once had. But instead, he exhaled sharply and said, "Do you think I don't notice? Do you think I haven't been fighting the same thing?" My heart dropped, because in that moment, everything I had been trying to bury came rushing to the surface. The unspoken feelings, the longing glances, the late-night conversations, they weren't just in my head. He felt it too, but that only made things more complicated. The days that followed were a blur of tension. Every interaction was layered with meaning. A casual touch on the arm lingered a second too long. A shared smile across the conference room felt like a secret. And every time I told myself to pull away, I found myself drawn closer. Then one evening, it all came to a breaking point. We had stayed late again, finishing a project, and as I gathered my things, Daniel said quietly, I can't keep pretending. I froze. He continued, I care about her. I really do. But when I'm with you, it feels different. It feels real. Tears stung my eyes because as much as I wanted to hear those words, I also knew what they meant. Someone would get hurt, and maybe that someone would be me. That night I walked away, not because I didn't feel the same, but because sometimes doing the right thing means breaking your own heart. I told him we can't cross this line. If we do, we'll lose ourselves and the people who trust us. Daniel didn't argue. He just looked at me. Pain etched across his face and nodded. I don't know how to stop caring about you, he admitted. Neither did I. It's been months since then. We're still coworkers, still polite, but that warmth, the easy friendliness that started it all, is gone. What remains is something unspoken, a shadow of what could have been. And sometimes, when I catch him looking at me from across the room, I wonder if he regrets not choosing differently. I know I do. Because what began as simple kindness grew into something neither of us expected. And once that line was blurred, nothing could ever be simple again.